Welcome to Sound Patterns, Sequential Sight Reading in the Choral Classroom by Emily Crocker. Hello everyone, my name is Emily Crocker and I'm speaking to you today from my home studio in Fort Worth, Texas. It's my pleasure to introduce to you a new choral resource that I've developed entitled Sound Patterns, Sequential Sight Reading in the Choral Classroom. It's available to you in several formats, making it easy for you to teach in a whole group situation or in distance learning on an individualized basis. If you're like me, you've seen these posts on social media. I need help with sight reading. I don't know how to approach it or teach it. And a lot of times people respond very quickly with, I use this book, or I use that book, or this works for me, but rarely do you see any kind of detailed discussion about the mechanics of actually learning what's successful in teaching sight singing. What researchers have determined are that there are two main factors that affect success in sight reading: the amount of time devoted to sight reading in each lesson, and the attitude of the teacher. Now the results, ironically, the reasons why teachers don't include sight reading in their lessons is not enough time and it's boring. So as I put together my resource, Sound Patterns, I began to think of how could I organize it in such a way that it was easily accessible to beginning students and teachers who are very, very busy. And what could I do to add interest and enthusiasm on the part of the students? What I came up with is, especially for the student angle, is that success is what drives students' learning. Once they're successful, they want to keep doing it. So how can we organize our instructional time with them and our instructional methods and materials to make it successful? Early in my teaching career, I was not successful in teaching sight reading. My students were smart, they were willing, but it just seemed like there was too much and it was too hard to take in all at once. So we would essentially mumble through songs we were attempting to sight read. This was frustrating for the students as well. And one day, fairly late in the year, April, I think, one of the students just said, "Mrs. Crocker, can't you just teach us how to do this?" And I thought to myself, why can't I? So at that point, I began investigating and paying attention really to where my students were actually, what was going on in the room, really listening to them. I also looked around the room. This was an old school. It had been a high school, so there were lots of materials that were raggedy and out of date. But there was one very useful item that I found. And some of you may be familiar with the Oxford Folk Song Sight Singing series. So I pulled it out. Now there are challenges to this. It's not really sequential. It's also very small and hard to read. But I did find that the musical examples were very good. They were all drawn from the literature. So the melodies were authentic and satisfying, and if I took my time to pick them appropriately, my students were attracted to them. So I handed out one example, which I thought was easy, and my students still had difficulty. And so something that might seem self-evident, but it wasn't self-evident to me, and it might not be self-evident to some of you, is that when you're introducing sight reading to pre-notational singers, you should separate rhythm from pitch. So as you're beginning this program with any group of singers, what you're really doing is you're laying the foundation for success in the future by building solid skills. You're going to approach this in a way like a band method or a piano course so that they're building skills step by step. Now you want to make sure they're singing from the very beginning. So as you emphasize rhythm, you're also singing. You're singing songs in the oral tradition like canons and folk songs and using body percussion. Songs like Bring Me Little Water, Sylvie, or The Cups song really builds great rhythm. And you're also going to want to sing songs that lend themselves well to the beat, recognizing the beat with large body motion such as arms or stepping or some type of ostinato. As you emphasize the beat, you want to use a physical motion. Our brains are primed to follow the beat and rhythm and to synchronize with others. Children from as young as age 2 begin to be able to demonstrate this. So my system involves introducing the beat with a vertical slash motion left to right. So they're beginning to be able to track rhythm and reading rhythm left to right. Again, using a full body motion like an arm motion and not too fast. Schools and districts often use different methods for counting rhythms and reading rhythms. And at this point, I would suggest just a simple chanting of a nonsense syllable like da with large body motion. Da, 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 etc. That way they can coordinate the motion with the chanting and concentrate on keeping a steady beat. So to move into rhythm, we're going to start with the basic note values: quarter note, half note, whole note. The definition is that a note represents musical sound, and the duration or length of each note is represented by different note values, as you can see here. Any note value can be assigned the beat, but most often it will be the quarter note. So as you see here, we have a series of quarter notes written in the same way that the beats were written earlier. So I would suggest that you speak the beat with a neutral syllable like ta or da, and again, show the physical movement for the beat as you speak those notes. The next step is to demonstrate the relationship between the note values with 4 beats of sound. With a quarter note, it's 1 sound per beat. With a half note, it's 1 sound per 2 beats. And with the whole note, it's 1 sound per 4 beats. From there, the next step is to organize the note values. Rhythm, and to give them the definition of rhythm as the organization of sound duration. Notes can be combined into different patterns. Now, I don't think it's necessary to memorize all these explanations. I do include the music theory aspects of reading rhythm and reading pitch, but it's more important to spend time on doing rather than memorizing. So in this situation, you're going to see that the notes are presented in a grid which begins to present reading rhythm or reading music in a left to right pattern like a phrase. Again, use a neutral syllable, show the beat, establish the left to right direction of musical notation. The meter is implied but not mentioned. You can see here that lines 1, 2, and 3 reinforce the note value relationships, and number 4 offers a bit of a mix-up. Moving on to lines 5, 6, 7, and 8, you're going to get more note value mix-ups, and you will establish the importance of focusing on the reading. You're going to see visual phrases. You're still prepping for learning about meter, which will come later. So my suggestion to you is to have the students again read on a neutral syllable. Your job is not to lead them by reading, but your job is to walk around and smile and watch them and make sure that they're focusing and tracking on the rhythm reading. Smile and nod and be encouraging. So reading the rhythms from the boxes or from the grid prepares the students for learning about measure, bar line, and meter. Again, I don't think it's necessary to spend a lot of time memorizing these things, but it's in one lesson or one lesson segment, you can identify the terms and symbols related to measure, meter, and bar line. Like I said before, I limit the introduction of concepts, and I give lots of time for practice. Next in line is time signature and meters, 4/4, 3/4, and 2/4. Now, students may not understand the concept of quarter note being 1/4. So if they don't have that well understood, make sure that they understand the concept that 1/4 equals 1/4. You can use the analogy of the 4 quarters in a dollar. So 4/4, 4 beats per measure, quarter note receives the beat. 3/4, 3 beats per measure, quarter note receives the beat. 2/4, 2 beats per measure, quarter note receives the beat. From this, we can move into reading similar rhythms that we read before, but in an actual music grid with the meter. And you can quickly review all the concepts by just who remembers bar line, who remembers what a measure is, what's the double bar for, what's a time signature, what does 4/4 mean. And from this, I would say create as many rhythms as you can from the notes that they have learned. Have the students create their own rhythms and create interesting combinations of rhythm. Next, we're going to focus on pitch. What I've tried to do here is give you a step-by-step method for introducing pitch reading to students. Most importantly, you need to sing with your students. You need to sing by rote, you need to sing canons, you need to sing folk songs, you need to sing echo patterns, warm-ups, songs with ostinatos, and octavos. Next, I introduce the keyboard to students with the pitch names, the C, D, E, F, G, A, B names. And I do this because most students are familiar with the keyboard and either have one at home or have played with one or have taken lessons in some way. From that, you need to transfer the learning of the pitches from the keyboard to a staff. And so therefore we need to introduce the treble clef and the staff and the lines and spaces and learn how to identify those. I tell students there are 2 ways to identify pitches. There are the CDE keyboard ways, and then there's the singing way, which is called solfege. Do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do. Most students have some familiarity with that, but if they don't, you can introduce it to them. Connect these absolute pitches to solfege. Echo sing, and also a good way is to introduce to them the Kerwin hand signs. This is a great tool that you can use, an anchor for students, and also a way to, as a whole group, connect your singing. From this, we move into melody patterns. I like to use these in both echo singing and in small group or large group patterns. These melodic patterns give you a chance to build facility. You can audiate, you can use the hand signs. I like to use what I call a silent pattern. In other words, for example, all the even examples are silent patterns. So sing through them and audiate silently sing the even patterns. Then go back and do it with odd, etc. Or a silent note. After some practice with this, you're ready to read music. I like to move into some melody examples. Again, we're going to use just the rhythms that we have studied, so there's nothing complicated there. Again, rhythm first. So when you introduce these melody examples, you're going to read the rhythms absolutely by themselves first, showing the beat, using your counting system or a neutral syllable, and then you add pitch. You need to give them a chance to identify the pitches in each measure. Go measure by measure. Do you write it in? That's up to you. It's a crutch, but you can do it if you need to. Or have them chant those pitches in rhythm with hand signs. Establish the pitch, echo sing some of the patterns from the song, and sing again using the rhythm. This is going to take a lot of practice, so go through it over and over. If they don't get it the first time, chances are they will be able to correct their own mistakes. Once each line has been sung successfully, the lines can be combined, and this is a great opportunity for you to begin building part singing skills, begin creating independent singers, and also allow you to challenge them for singing the lines together. When you've exhausted every possibility of combinations, it's time to move into singing actual songs. I believe that this is maybe the most important concept that I include in this series, which is to have songs with accompaniments, with words, and hopefully some motivational value for students. Students are eager to be successful. So I've included songs at every point of the way where we only used the concepts studied up to that point. So if we take a look at the song here, Far Across the Valley, you're going to use the same strategies. You're going to focus first on the rhythm. You're going to then identify the pitches used. You're going to chant the pitches. You're going to hand sign the pitches. You're going to sing in solfege. You're going to sing in solfege with accompaniment, and then finally going to add the words. So after all of those things, they should be able to sight read the song. Anytime you run across difficulty, simply do it again, because chances are they know where their challenges are. They'll be able to fix it. If you need to isolate a particular thing, you can. So I would love to be able to have everybody sing this together, but we can't, so we'll just have to use our imaginations. So here is Far Across the Valley. So now let's review where we are. We've sung our very first song at the end of the second chapter. The song consists of a diatonic 5-note melody, quarter note, half note, whole notes with lots of repetition. So hopefully they've been successful. If they've not been successful, then you will need to go back and practice more on rhythm and pitch. Do more echo singing, do more melody patterns, combine the melody patterns in different ways, and begin to really solidify the pitch and rhythm internalization. Your job through this whole process has been to not sing, but be encouraging. Because if you constantly are leading them through the songs, they're not learning to rely on their own brains and ears and voices. So give them lots of prep. Now, if you have the teacher edition of Sound Patterns, you have the option of referring to a lot of online content in my library. This includes also the audio of the songs and of the exercises, which you can use, the students can use for practice, or you can use for assessment, or you can download and record with their voices or your voices or the whole group's voices. However you want to, that is available to you. So hopefully this gives you a sense of the process for sound patterns. I'm going to move quickly through some of the other materials in the course so you can see the scope of the learning and to let you know the types of products available. There's the student book, which is kind of like a band method, I guess I would say, a method book. Students can sing and read and master the material on their own. There's also a teacher edition, which comes in a slightly larger size. The teacher edition has all the assets of the student book, along with some teaching suggestions and step-by-step tips for introducing to the students. Teacher edition also has a code in the front cover, which allows you to access all the digital materials included in the teacher edition, all the teaching slides, all the there's audio for the melody examples, and there's audio for the songs. There's no singing on this, however, but once you buy it, you can do whatever you want to. If you are teaching distance learning, then feel free to download the audio examples and into GarageBand or Audacity and add your own voice or however you wish to use them. So we're going to take a quick look at some of the other songs, and again, I thank you for your patience in working your way through the end of this video. Oh, I forgot one thing. If you are interested in a full class set, there's a great value, which is described on the back, which is a classroom bundle, one teacher, which includes the digital assets, and 30 student copies. So if you're teaching reduced size classes next year, or if you're still involved in some distance learning, I think this is an excellent way to jumpstart your program, whether you go to large group sight reading, UIL, or that sort of thing. This is a great way to start the year with your treble choirs. It's a good review for older groups as well. So here are some of the songs, and I hope you enjoy them. Thanks. So we can't sing in the key of C forever. So I'll try to give you some tools that you can use to introduce your young sight readers to a new key. This is kind of a big deal for them actually, because they're just learning to recognize the symbols of music and connect them with the sound. So you need to take time to allow them to practice these new concepts. So we'll relate it again to the keyboard. We'll introduce the concept of flat, B flat, and the concept of the key signature for the F major being with E flat, B flat in the key signature. From there, move it to the staff. From there, transfer the scale to solfege. And then, as before, give them plenty of chances to practice the patterns in the scale. Echo, sing, sing as a whole group, and then move into exercises. So sight read exercises, give them a chance to use their hand signs and reinforce the audiation, and practice, practice, practice. So here's a reminder that with each chapter in the book, I've tried to include the tools that you need to introduce and reinforce the concepts being explored. For example, here we're introducing the dominant chord in F major. So we start with a review of the tonic chord. We move on to introducing and explaining the dominant chord. And then we give you some opportunities to echo sing and practice the intervals from these chords. This is taken one step further into exercises that feature melodies that use the intervals in the chord, plus all the rhythms studied up to this point. And then this will lead to the song for that chapter. As we saw earlier in a previous chapter, I've given you the tools you need to gradually introduce new concepts as you move along. In this case, we're going to move into the third key presented in Sound Patterns Book 1, key of G. So as before, I'm going to present it starting with the keyboard, introduce the F sharp and the key signature of F sharp for the key of G major, and also the scale and the scale in solfege. This, along with echo patterns for reading and singing and audiating, exercises, and also gradually introducing other elements of rhythm gives you plenty of things to work on at this stage. Well, we're coming to the end of our Book 1 tutorial, where we continue in the key of G and introduce the third chord in our series, which is the subdominant chord. From here, you can move into the echo patterns and practice the intervals that they need to become fluent in with the intervals in these chords, tonic, dominant, and subdominant. And then from there, we move into, again, exercises and a final song to complete the course.